Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the CMU Sport Management Podcast. Just a quick heads up before you get into today's episode. This conversation was recorded back in February, so if there's anything brought up that is no longer current, that would be the reason why. Without any further ado, let's get into today's episode, a conversation with Kyle England. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the CMU Sport Management Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Sandel, and today I am joined by another Kyle and the current Senior Premium Partnership Sales Manager with the Detroit Lions, Kyle England. Thank you for joining the show today, Kyle. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, Kyle, and thanks for having me here.
Of course, this was, I wanted to get someone involved in the NFL. I've tried to get all the different professional sports here, so I think that this is going to be a great opportunity. Obviously, about a month ago, the Lions finished up their season. Just quickly before we get into anything else, like how was it being a part of the Lions organization this year after, probably the best season in history?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a magical season, and they, the guys team, they exceeded well past our expectations. I can promise you that much. We had a lot of belief in the team and everything, and honestly, like me personally speaking, I was just hoping to get to the playoffs and if we squeak out a win out of it, great. But no, we're really happy with how far they went, and hopefully we'll be making another run here next year.
Yeah, I don't think that a lot of Lions fans are satisfied with this just being a one-year thing. Like I think that hopefully this can continue to go into the future. So let's take it way back. The first question that I'd like to start off with everyone is, I saw that you started at CMU in 2009. So before that time, what was the inspiration in coming to Central Michigan to study sport management?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of kick things off. I actually decided to go to Central Michigan for more personal reasons, not really on the kind of subject matter side. So, decided to go there just because I had a lot of family going to Central Michigan. There's a couple
Okay.
other schools I was looking at, but ultimately I decided on Central. Just had a lot of friends going there, had a lot of family. When I started off as a freshman, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do just yet. Sure, just like most freshmen coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
So had to figure that out a little bit. But ultimately, after my freshman year, I had decided, I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing hockey and tennis as a kid and in high school and everything. So I knew that's what I wanted to take a deep dive into. I just didn't know where to start. So took a couple meetings with some advisors and everything, and that's when they told me about this whole sport management program. And I think actually at the time it was called sport studies. And
Oh, okay.
so kind of showing my years here a little bit, but but no, got to talk to a few of them, including Professor Adler, who I believe is still there and everything.
Yes.
So he was a huge benchmark into getting me into that program. So, but ultimately, with my sophomore year, that's when I kind of, really getting into the program there, and as they say, the rest is history at that point.
Yeah. So are you from like a Central Michigan area then, since you said you had a lot of family go there?
Not like in the Mount Pleasant area per se,
Right.
but grew up near Metro Detroit and Macomb and everything. So
Okay.
between friends in high school, and then like I had a couple cousins going to Central as well. So it was just a popular destination, and I just wanted to be around a lot of my friends and family that were also going there.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're at your time at Central, obviously you talked about how at first you might not have known what you wanted to do, but once you were in the program, what were some experiences that you got to be involved in during your time at Central Michigan? Obviously, I saw on your LinkedIn that you did several internships throughout your time at Central Michigan, including with the Saginaw Spirit, Lansing Lugnuts, Great Lakes Loons. How were those experiences and other ones at Central?
Yeah. So first, I'll touch on these internships here with the Saginaw Spirit, Lugnuts, and Loons and everything. So, and I got this advice from Professor Adler. Really, I wanted to explore all these different facets of working in the sports industry because I knew by that point I wanted to work in sports. I wanted to work in the business side of things and in the front office. I just didn't know exactly which area I wanted to explore just yet. So my goals, if you will, with these internships was to explore these different departments. So with the Saginaw Spirit, it was the marketing side of things. So did a lot of game day entertainment. I was on the promotions crew, doing on ice promotions, tossing T-shirts into the crowd, and getting that experience for, what it takes from a marketing perspective to entertain fans at a game, especially in minor league sports where marketing has a heavy influence in bringing people out.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the case with the Saginaw Spirit. Lansing Lugnuts was definitely more on the ticket sales side of things, especially in group sales, where that is, tending to be the lifeblood for most minor league baseball teams, is bringing groups out, whether it's schools, churches, nonprofit organizations, businesses, you name it. So that's where I got a lot of my experience on the sales side of things, was with the Lansing Lugnuts. And then when it came to the Great Lakes Loons, with my last internship, the last department I really wanted to explore was corporate partnerships. So that's the department I reported to with the Great Lakes Loons at that point in time. Had a lot of good experiences working with a couple different companies with their sponsorships with that team. And a lot of it had to do with the activation at particular games. So can't really say names, but there was one particular company that sponsored like the bat kit of the game, as well as some of the promo days that we had. So my job was to just making sure those activation units basically got used, and make sure the bat kit showed up and they had the company's T-shirt on, and small things like that, just to make sure that the Loons organization was fulfilling their end of the contract, if you will.
Okay, yeah. So I'd like that how you said you wanted to explore different parts of the sports industry, not just all doing the same thing. I think that's a very good piece of advice to current students that especially want to get into sports but don't know exactly what part of it they want to get in. So once you were finished up at Central Michigan, obviously I wrote down a couple of things here, but I saw that you were with the University of Toledo. Was it the Aspire Group? Is that what that was?
Yep, exactly. So the Aspire Group was definitely a very unique organization, and I can attest to the success I had early on to their training. They were great to work under. Basically what had happened was the University of Toledo at the time didn't really have like an outbound sales presence. So they brought in the Aspire Group, and that's their specialty, is primarily ticket sales with a lot of college sports, whether it's University of Toledo, Western Michigan, there was Eastern Michigan, and a couple other schools nearby. But Toledo was great. They had a really good football program, really good basketball program, and working under the Aspire Group really helped me set me on the path and the success I had leading into today. So they taught me everything from old school cold calling, getting appointments, getting clients down at the time to the stadium or the football field or the glass bowl, as they call it there in Toledo. And my first manager, his name is Matt. He's over out west now, working in MLS here at this point. But he kind of taught me everything I knew, and how to be successful in the sales industry. And, they kind of set me on my path, and just overall a great organization to work with.
Yeah, and I saw that you were part of a group that won the Mac Sales Consultant of the Year in 2017. How'd you guys go about winning that?
Yeah, so that was actually an individual contest that was put on by the different Aspire Group locations within the Mac conference. So it was just kind of like a fun contest to really push and motivate us to, bring in more sales, of course, make more calls, bring in more appointments. So the managers basically got together, and this was at the time my boss Justin at Toledo, the manager over at the Western Michigan property, the Eastern Michigan property, and then I believe the Miami of Ohio property at the time. So all of us sales reps were competing with each other to see, who was able to make the most calls, who brought in the most revenue, who got the most appointments. It was a year-long contest, and it definitely came down to the wire between me and another rep. And luckily, I was able to beat him out by not a crazy amount, but I was able to beat him out in terms of revenue here. At the very tail end of that contest.
That's awesome, especially being a tight race like that. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now taking you into your current day. Obviously, you had more time with the Lansing Lugnuts after this, and with the United Shore Pro Baseball League. So how did you land? How did you end up with the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. This is post COVID, where that was an interesting time. I was with the Lansing Lugnuts, or I should say back with the Lansing Lugnuts, for about 3 years, including that interesting COVID year where there was no sports going on. So that was a little challenging. But Learned a lot from that experience, especially like once we were able to come back working remote. And at the time, we had limited attendance where we can only have so many people at the ballpark per game. And then luckily, Governor Whitmer, after like a month, kind of released that ruling, and we were able to have full fan attendance back at the Lugnuts later on. So learned a lot from that experience, especially as at the time group sales manager, and had to be a little bit flexible with some of those rule changes and being flexible to everyone's situation that was coming out to those games.
Right.
But circling back to joining the Lions here, some of this was personal decision making, some of it was professional. Loved my time at the Lugnuts and everything. It was a great experience, great culture, great staff to be a part of. But working in baseball, being as great as it is a lot of games, very long homestands, and you are at most of them.
Right.
So as I was getting older, got married, wanted to raise a family and everything, ultimately I was looking for that next step, both in terms of career, but selfishly wanted to be in a sport where there was less events going on so I could spend more time at home with the family. So luckily my timing was good. Again, after COVID, the Lions, with their recent kind of shift with Sheila coming in, taking over, bringing in General Manager Brad Holmes and Coach Campbell and everything. There wasn't just only that culture change with the team, but there was also a lot of changes going on in the front office as well for the better. Kind of like a long time coming in terms of when I started the interview process versus when I was able to come in. Just a lot of those changes were happening. But kind of started that process in the late spring, early summer, and eventually was able to come in the fall, right during the middle of that first season with Coach Campbell and everything. But it was a good process. Everyone was great the whole way through, but is part of it was good timing. And the other part was kind of sticking with the process, if you will, since it was just kind of like a lengthy interview process, if you will.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, and you talk about how, you enjoyed your time with the Lugnuts, but it makes a lot of sense. You go from, I mean, it's not the same as MLB, I assume, but 162 games, like that type of season compared to 16 in the NFL. So was working for the Lions at some point always a long-term goal of yours, or did it just work out that you had an opportunity to do so?
Yeah, I mean, my long-term goal was to eventually work in pro sports at that pro level. Back in college, when I first decided to get into sports management, I'll be honest, I grew up playing hockey, so especially going up to Michigan, kind of wanted to go towards the Red Wing route.
Right.
So, but as I got older, being at home more and with the wife and at the time, future kids down the line, my perspective shifted to Lions football, not only for less events side, but again, at the time, I saw what was going on with the Lions organization, with Sheila coming in, Coach Campbell, Brad Holmes, and I'll be honest, and I even said this in my interview, Coach Campbell had me at the kneecap speech. So like he got me on board. I was drinking the blue Kool-Aid at that point. So I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are going somewhere. Like I like this coach. He's a player's coach, and I think he can get the locker room behind him and everything. So there's a little bit of that fan side of me that really wanted to join the Lions after that.
Right.
But not only that, like during the course of my interviews, I was talking to different members of the leadership team and different managers and everything, and all in all, they were all great people to get to know and talk to and everything, and they were able to convince me like, hey, this is a great place to be part of, great culture and everything, and we want to make sure we keep it that way. So ultimately, they helped convince me like, hey, this is the place to be at. Something special is going to happen here soon. And I think we're all seeing the fruits of that labor at this point.
For sure, and it's happened so quickly as well. That's awesome to hear that Coach Campbell's speech didn't just impact the fans, it impacted people that eventually ended up being in the organization as well. I think that's super awesome. So what you said that you joined in November of his first season, correct? So
yep,
what was it like
correct.
coming in, during the season instead of in the off season?
Yeah, I mean, it was I don't want to say a true trial by fire because I've been working in sports for some time, but coming in the midst of the season, My first game was actually the Thanksgiving game, which
Oh,
is
perfect.
it doesn't matter if you're undefeated or have a losing record. Like Thanksgiving is always going to be like one of the biggest games here with Lions football here
For
at Ford
sure.
Field. So, my first game was sold out crowd, a lot of craziness going on, and I had to pick up things pretty quickly with how everything operates here at Ford Field. So,
Mhm.
um, overall, it's a good experience. Luckily, by this point coming in, I had been doing sales and working with tickets and suites and everything for some time. So, luckily, I was able to pick up on things fairly quickly. And that's the one cool thing about working in sales is once you know how you operate as a sales rep, really, if you're coming into a new place, it's all about just learning product knowledge, what the pricing is, how everything looks and feels in a venue, whether it's suites, season tickets, group ticket outings, you name it. So once you pick up on that and you start to learn it, everything else just kind of falls into place there.
Right. So the one question that I usually like to ask all people that, working in sports, because there's a season and then there's the off season. So for you with your job, how much does it make a difference on during the season versus the off season, like a day to day for you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, being in the NFL and not just the NFL, but Ford Field as a whole, there's not truly an off season because
Right.
once the season wraps up, like we're already focused on 2024 and in some cases even 2025 at this point.
Hmm.
So like during the season, like everything for the most part, especially early on to the midpoint, is just all about that current season. So like in my particular case, being in mostly suite sales. I'm just trying to sell one game, two games, suite rentals on a per game basis. Versus right now, my primary function is working with different clients and companies to book a lot of our suites here with us on more of like a season or like a 2, 3, 5 year season basis here with us. So. And those relationships sometimes takes pretty long to foster. So
Yeah.
there's clients that I've talked to and been working with, and they can book like a suite outing here with us fairly quickly. And there's other relationships where it's taken 3 years to foster, and now they're coming in to do something here with us long term. So it varies client by client, but there is not really an off season here with us. So and not even just on the football side, but with other events as well. Because that's the cool thing about Ford Field is we host a lot more than just football here.
Hmm.
So coming up, we got 3 different concerts going on that have been announced right now with George Strait and Chris Stapleton coming in, Zach Bryan, and then Kenny Chesney coming back here as well. So we're selling suites and things for that too. And especially last year being a record year in terms of concerts,
Yeah.
with Taylor Swift coming in for back-to-back shows, Morgan Wallen, Beyonce. It was definitely a very special year for us on the business side last year, not just with Lions football, but for all of our other events as well.
Yeah. I mean, Ford Field is definitely the spot for other events other than sports, obviously, like with concerts and everything. So we've already mentioned it a few times, obviously, but the Lions had a phenomenal season this past year. Compared to seasons past, they won in the NFC North, going to the NFC Championship game. How much does the team success affect you with your position? With whether it's, I know Lions fans are very loyal and they come to games anyways with buying tickets and everything, but how much
Mhm.
does a season like this compare to a non great season, I guess, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, conversations with clients and who you're trying to talk to, sell to are a little bit different. It's things were a little bit, I guess, quieter when I first started. Just with trying to bring folks in and test out some of our suites here, for example. Um, it's kind of more about really honing in your sales skills and kind of showing how great the experience is here at Ford Field, whether it is for a concert or Lions football, win or lose. Because even if there's a win or loss, most people, especially on the suite side, still had a good time here with us.
Right.
Didn't matter the result of how the team was doing. Versus right now with all the hype around the team and Lions make a good run in the playoffs and focusing on next year, and we're only looking to improve. Conversations just seem a little bit different. You still really hone in on that experience here at Ford Field, especially in my area with suites and everything. But you're at this point trying to capitalize on the hype around the team and really honing in on that emotion factor. Because now word's out at this point. People love seeing what they're seeing with the team
Definitely.
and Coach Campbell and everything, and a lot of them want to be a part of it. So it's just kind of honing in on that hype, and trying to capitalize on it right
So what would you say is your favorite part then about your career?
now.
If you can just make one,
Honestly,
obviously, it's probably
no,
difficult.
yeah, no, it's a good question. So as of right now, honestly, it's really been a part of this whole like process with the change of the team. You're first coming in, and I think at the time the Lions hadn't gotten a win just yet, when I first started,
Right.
and just being a part of this process with the team, with the culture, with Sheila and everything, and just being a part of this whole turnaround and seeing the success of that. It's awesome, man. Like it's a pretty cool experience. Getting in and joining this organization when I did. And now hopefully at this point we'll be able to, run it back next year and finally get that Super Bowl.
Yeah, for real. It's from the outside looking in, it just looks awesome to be a part of the change that has happened, starting with Sheila down to Brad and Dan. So I can only imagine how it is actually being a part of the organization. So yeah, I mean, we talked about some great parts of your career. What are some challenges that you face in your career?
Yeah, as far as like challenges and career goes, it's a lot of the same challenges that most sales rep face. Whether it's different price points, finding the right client that's the best fit for you, not only just for as like an overall partner, for example, but also just finding what works best for them in terms of the style of event. Luckily, we're part of an organization and a venue where we have multiple opportunities to find that best fit. So if someone doesn't like football, like, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about like a concert or one of our dirt shows. Or like last year we had WWE wrestling that has a huge following. So um, there's those challenges. Also part of it, it's this kind of comes with the territory of working in sports, but it's also balancing your personal life. So it's just trying to make sure you keep your family happy, keep them connected. And just trying to make sure you're still doing your job here as well and making sure you're at the events and everything too. So
Hmm.
again, luckily part of a good culture that prioritizes family and making sure that you stay good, stay healthy, keep the family as a priority. So honestly, it's the biggest challenge I've ever had in my career in sports. It does go down to a personal level where it's just trying to balance your personal life with your work career.
Yeah, I think that's a very common answer, I think, for a lot of people that work in sports as well. So quickly, I kind of have like a personal question for you. This was something that interested me. So after the Lions play their first home playoff game against the Rams, and it's kind
Mhm.
of up in the air whether or not they're going to have another playoff home game or not, with the Packers defeating the Cowboys. How does
Yep.
that whole process work of like, oh, we just realized that we have a home game now? Like, is there like a scramble going on as far as ticket sales and everything and booking those suites?
Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
So we had to move hard and fast on a lot
Uh-huh.
of these things, especially when it comes to suites and getting those booked up and sold. Luckily, Detroit and Michigan is a great market to be a part of because Lions football has been such a big impact on the community overall. You got a lot of fans that want to be a part of this special moment here with us.
Uh-huh.
So but yeah, no, it's after the Green Bay and Cowboys game, then after we won, we already realized at that point, like, oh, we're gonna have to like start 8 days early and be working on maybe a little bit later on Monday, Tuesday, and the rest of
Uh-huh.
the week. So luckily our leadership team had been planning for this, just in case. So pretty much by that point on Monday, like we were ready to go with pricing and what suites were available, and we had a little bit of a wait list going already by that point. So at least the initial wave was quick and easy. But by that point, it was just had to make call after call after call with anybody who had expressed interest. In our suites in the past. Not only that, but we were getting inbound calls left and right, and not just
Uh-huh.
calls, emails, web forms. So we just wanted to make sure we addressed all those that were interested as much as we could.
Yeah, that's
So
not. It's good to know that there was preparation, obviously, there for no playoff games ever at Ford Field, and then there was two this season, so it's pretty awesome. So last thing I have for you is the thing I always like to finish it off with all of the guests of the show. What was your biggest piece of advice for a student that is currently in the sport management program at Central Michigan that wants to get a career in sports, maybe to do something in sales as well? What would be your biggest piece of advice?
yeah, biggest advice I have is I guess figure out what you're passionate about first, just because there's so many different facets of working in sports, whether it's ticket sales, corporate partnerships, all the way down to like facility operations, marketing, you name it. There's so many different areas that you can get into within the sports industry. So try to find what you're passionate about first, whether it's with your classes, talking to different advisors. Don't be afraid to send emails or messages to other leaders and on different teams in the sports industry. Most will respond back to you because a lot of us want to make sure that we can help bring in the next generation, if you will,
Hmm.
into the industry as much as we can. So don't be afraid to reach out to different teams and different sports leaders because you never know who might respond. Next thing I'll say is the sports industry as a whole is a very, very small world. So everyone, for the most part, knows each other, talks to each other. So if you're ever looking to build a resume, get your name out there, don't be afraid to network, whether it's LinkedIn or talking to different people, because you never know. You could be interviewing with, a group sales manager with one team, and you had a previous interview with a group sales manager on another team. And a lot of times, like they will talk to each other and see that. And they can, give good or maybe not so good recommendations based on how those interviews went or some of your past experiences are. So
Hmm.
just always keep your head up high when you're doing these internships or, different, jobs and things like that. Just try to make sure you put your best foot forward. Be the hardest worker in the room because everyone knows each other and our managers are not afraid to call somebody on your resume to figure out who you, not only like your work ethic, but who you are as a person.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kyle, for joining the show. I thought this was great. We got the draft coming up for the Lions in Detroit
Yep.
as well, so that's going to be very exciting. Hopefully, Brad Holmes and the group can add some more pieces to get us to that Super Bowl. So, thanks again, Kyle, for joining the show, and thank you to you guys for listening to another episode of the Sport Management Podcast.